Liberate IT is an Oracle NetSuite solution provider that has been servicing Australian and New Zealand companies since 2011.
Well, good morning and welcome to the latest of the Liberate IT webinar series. I am your host today, Andrew Linigo, Relationship Manager of Liberate IT. Really looking forward to hearing from the team at ELMO today. We've got a cast of three, so really looking forward to what they have to share, all about the world of HR and learning management and onboarding. It's really going to be quite something. Before we kick off though, just a little bit about what's happening around the grounds. The data center migration is continuing. You will get an in-product notification by NetSuite to let you know that they're migrating your data center from the US across to either Sydney or Melbourne. That's ongoing. That will probably complete around this time next year. So if you're not on that list just yet, don't worry, you are going to be migrating at some stage in the next few months. So keep an eye out for that. So far, the feedback from customers that have migrated across is that it's been completely seamless and there's been no business disruption. So that's awesome. 21.2 updates are now complete. I think last weekend was the last tranche of everyone that's gone to the new version. So make sure you go and look at our most recent webinar where we talked about all that's included in those in that update. See if there's anything in there that you might take advantage of. If you're not sure, feel free to reach out to me and I'd love to take you through that. Hot off the press, Suite Commerce Standard is coming in 2022. So I've heard from NetSuite that Suite Commerce Standard, which is NetSuite's website offering, but a simplified version compared to what they call SEA, is coming in 2022. So that's exciting in that it's more about configuring the website than it is doing a whole brand new e-commerce build. What I'm finding customers in the Northern Hemisphere are using that for is if you've invested significantly in your existing website, but you just want to create a B2B portal so that your customers can transact with you, taking advantage of Suite Commerce Standard that can retain all of your branding and logos, etc. But having that B2B experience is something that many are taking advantage of. So you don't have to completely do away with your website. You can create this as a complementary website and just have a seamless experience for your customers. Suite World in the US is going on right now. Usually the team from Liberate are over there, but with all that's going on in the world, it's a bit hard to get a flight at the moment to the US. So NetSuite do have a Suite World on air. It's running until, I think, Thursday. So you can get a free online ticket and see all that's going on at Suite World over in Vegas at the moment. So worthwhile checking that out. If you want a link to that, just type in NetSuite Suite World and you'll find it there. It'll be quite easy to find. Any new users amongst us, I would encourage you to check out our either YouTube channel or resources page on our website. NetSuite 101 for new users, great overview of all things NetSuite if you're new to the product. Talking of which, all of the webinars that we've been doing over the last, 2 or 3 years now, they are all on our website. Go check them out, subscribe to our YouTube so that you can be notified whenever we post a new one like this one. So we'll be recording today's session. We'll be posting it on our channel and then a website for you to have a look at in the future. In terms of Q&A today, we're going to have some Q&A opportunity at the end. So if you've got any questions from the team that you need answered, feel free to write those in the Q&A box down the bottom of your screen. I'd ask you to avoid the chat. Can't get rid of that chat, unfortunately. So please don't put your questions there. Just put them into the Q&A box. That'd be fantastic. As always, a reminder that we've got Brett Marquet, who's our optimization manager. His role essentially is to get out there, see our customers, And as a free service, just make sure that you're getting the most out of the NetSuite. He does a bit of a system review, and so if you're feeling like, hey, we could probably get a little bit more out of NetSuite, get in contact with me. I can line up Brett to spend some time with you. Really looking forward to that as well. So here we are. We're going to present ELMO to you today. I've got Andrew Beatty, the Regional Sales Manager from ELMO, and Kenny Addison, who heads up the New Zealand branch. They're going to be presenting you all things ELMO. So without any further ado, I might hand over to Kenny.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate that. I'll just get a bit of an introduction going whilst my colleague Fana Sher is popping up our presentation for today. Really looking forward to spending some time with you all talking about all things ELMO and the software that we provide in the market, and how we've been working with Liberate IT more recently to ensure that anyone who's out there looking at their finance side of the business and the technology in that space is able to access a wonderful platform like we've got through the ELMO Payroll software option for you. Introducing my colleagues today, Andrew Beatty, as Andrew said, is our National Sales Manager. Andrew's been with us now for a couple of years and is really doing a great job in growing our sales footprint here in New Zealand. And Fana Sher is our Solutions Consultant Team Lead for New Zealand. Fana's been with us coming up 4 years now and leads all our demonstrations, and he'll take you through some of our software later on this morning. Thanks, Fana. We'll jump into this next slide and just give you a little bit of an overview of who ELMO is if you haven't come across us before. If you are operating out of Australia and New Zealand, there's a high likelihood that you will know who ELMO is. We're one of the leading ANZ providers of integrated human resources and payroll software solutions. More recently, an ASX listed 300 or top 300 ASX listed organisation, headquartered out of Sydney and owned and operated and hosted in the ANZ region. So we've been making great strides over the last 20 years and more recently in the last 4 years listing on the ASX really allowed the organisation to make that big step change. And that's seen the growth of the organisation really take us into a little bit of a different stratosphere in terms of 600 employees globally now. Whilst we have 6 offices in Australia and New Zealand, we've now opened offices in the UK through some more recent acquisitions. So the system has really been developed for this ANZ market, but also we're now taking that up to the UK and launching it there. And it really does cover that end-to-end hire to retire mentality of an employee life cycle. Thanks, Fana. In terms of the organisation itself, with the rapid growth comes many challenges, but we've been really fortunate to have a great team at ELMO. And in doing so, I've been able to not only be nominated for some of the great awards that go on in the HR community, but also in the tech industry as well. And we've picked up a number of awards recently. More noted are things like, from the technology perspective, our ISO accreditation and ongoing commitment to that, something that we take very seriously at ELMO, but also, you know, some of these as an emerging brand and a rapid growth tech company. SaaS is our source. That's what we are, a true SaaS organization. And so fully integrated software that provides organizations that ability to select differentiated modules and grow the footprint as they need it has been a real selling point for us. And that's really resonated with different organizations that have recognized the work that we've been doing. So plenty to be excited about, and I'll hand over to Andrew Beatty now just to take us through a few more insights into ELMO. Thanks, Andrew.
Cheers, Kenny. Yeah, so I guess just to give you a little bit more of an understanding of ELMO's kind of competitive advantage in the market, a little more around our offering. But you know, essentially what we're looking to do is really provide, you know, that one vendor, one dashboard, one user experience for our customers out there, so that they have really an end-to-end solution. And as Kenny mentioned earlier, that kind of, we talk to that hire to retire piece, so that they do have one single source of truth. Public listed, so yeah, ASX 300, and the system was designed and developed for the ANZ market. So you can be safe in the knowledge that what you're getting here in New Zealand has been designed and developed for NZ. And that includes a lot of content and workflows that have been built around the New Zealand market, and for the likes of learning material as well, which is tied to New Zealand legislation and regulations here. When we talk around cloud-based, we're cloud-based with multi-device, anytime, anywhere access to the solution. Kenny's talked a little bit to that ISO 27001, but we're audited on that on a 6-monthly basis. So really hold ourselves to the highest of the industry standards when it comes to that security piece, which is obviously vital when we're dealing with employee data. The commitment to continuous improvement, I mean, that's certainly one that we're really proud of. We commit to investing at least 20% of our revenue back into R&D on an annual basis. So what you see today is not what you'll see tomorrow. We're a SaaS solution, and we continue to evolve and develop. The local support and account management team, and we've got 40 heads on the ground here in New Zealand. If you're a customer of ours, you do have an account manager that'll be based here in NZ that'll be looking after you, that really understands some of the nuances and challenges that come with the New Zealand landscape. So another really key one there. And when we talk to the flexible and scalable solution, I mean, we've got customers at sort of head counts of kind of 20 or 30 right through to multiple thousands. So we can scale with the size of your business. And then also, I guess a good segue if you want to move on to the next slide there, Whana, but we have an integrated solution, but we also have a modular solution. So again, we can scale with your business as you look to add in other modules and create a wider future state. So what you're seeing here is really the ELMO solution in our offering. So along the top there, you've got 6 kind of key pillars or families, if you will. Pay, engage, hire, retain, develop, and predict. And then everything under those are all modules. So typically what we would do with any organization is sit down and have a really good conversation around what their people, culture, process, pay situation looks like at the moment, where there are particular pain points, and essentially where ELMO can add value. So for most organizations, that will typically include multiple modules across the bulk of these pillars. And I think it's also important to point out that they do transcend their pillars. If you look at the likes of, say, performance management and succession management, yes, they sit within the retain pillar, but equally they're hugely important when it comes to the engagement of employees and also the development of employees as well. Now, we probably don't have time today to cover all of these modules. But it will be a fairly whistle-stop tour from Whana. But what we'll probably try and do is focus a little bit more. We're conscious that there's probably a little bit more of a finance bent to the people that are on here today. So we'll probably try and focus a little bit more around some of our finance-orientated modules, payroll, expenses, remuneration, but give you a little bit of a feel for some of the HR ones as well and what they may look like. Thanks, Juan. If we think around, what we're seeing in the market at the moment, and the conversations that we're having out there, a lot of it is around that productivity and efficiency piece. And particularly if I look at some of the lower mid-market space, it's businesses and organisations that have got themselves to a size and scale and probably haven't had much there when it comes to some of the the process and efficiencies that they can run through HR and payroll software. Getting that automation and productivity off the back end of that. The metrics piece, I think, is an interesting one. It's obviously one that in other areas, you talk finance or logistics, for example. I mean, metrics are a big part of that, but probably previously from an HR point of view, as much, and you can't manage what you can't measure. So it's interesting to talk to more and more people around that, and it's becoming a lot bigger thing. It's making sure that there are metrics that can be measured across that HR payroll piece. And then really just the smarter use of technology. It's obviously, come a long way in a fairly short space of time, but, addressing some of those areas I've just talked around, but improving accuracy, reducing errors, ensuring that there's not things from a compliance point of view that we're out of whack on, or health and safety. Again, providing that single source of truth. We've talked a little bit to that security piece and the privacy piece already as well. But yeah, and the compliance and auditability is a big part of what we do as well.
Thanks, Andrew. I'm just going to touch on the next 3 slides are really to give you a little bit of insight into what we're going to look at today. Between ourselves, we've touched on, and Andrew sort of introduced it a little bit. I'm going to touch on an HR core. That's going to look at how we create this opportunity to overcome some of the challenges that organizations sometimes see. No central repository of employee data, and you can see in the bullet points highlighted there that can often be a challenge for an organization. So we'll look at how HR core helps overcome some of that, and particularly in the employee self-service element, that ability to give an environment for employees to go into and really own some of that data ownership, start to add some information to help facilitate better outcomes for the business. And we'll show you how one of the modules that we've got there can do that. Fun, I'll just get you to move on to the next slide because I'm also conscious of your time. When it comes to payroll, rostering, time and attendance, look, there are always challenges that sit within selecting the right payroll, but also how to fully integrate those with your other people's systems. So we're going to touch on a little bit in there and how you can overcome things like the single touch payroll and SuperStream and AU, also payday filing and utilization of the KiwiSaver functions in NZ. And then managing leave, that's also an incredibly important part. Tag that on with expense management. We're starting to see more organizations utilizing expense management. Right now during COVID, we've probably seen less credit card spend because we're sat at home, but we are still seeing invoices coming in. We do still need to deploy them, and we can do them as part of an integrated solution and part of a wider offering. So we'll touch on that a little bit and be able to give you some insights as to what that can look like on the ELMO solution. And then last but no means least, we'll touch on some of those high-level other modules that we talked about. How do you potentially recruit and onboard the right people and give them the right experiences? We know that positive onboarding experiences can create longer tenure, and the market has some real challenges there. And also in the development and that learning piece and that performance piece, we'll be able to touch on some of the functionalities that sit within those modules. And then, as Andrew touched on earlier, as a true SaaS organization, the product development is actually really critical for us. And most recently, we've actually just launched ELMO COVID Secure, which touches on how organizations are managing not only COVID-19 testing, but that vaccination management, with Australia and New Zealand starting to see more reflection in things like mandated requirements to be in workplaces. How do you manage that? How do you work on those processes, privacy issues, and dealing with the changes in those government policies on the fly? So we'll be able to give you an insight into that. But with no further ado, we'll hand over to the man, myth that is Fana Share, and we'll get him to give you a bit of an overview of the system. Thanks, Fana.
Thank you, Kenny. So just bear with me for a couple of seconds. I'll quickly get that show starting for us by sharing my screen. All right, so first things first, as Kenny mentioned, I'm going to take you on a little bit of a journey today and touch on the specific areas that probably touch finance the most throughout our product set. Again, just to cover a little bit about the solution in broad, it is a software as a service cloud-based solution. We can access the solution from anywhere as long as we have a mobile device or a device that can cater for a browser as well as an internet connection, then we can access the solution. We also have point apps applications, mobile applications for certain areas. For instance, where we talk about web expenses, we've got people out there on the road and they can access the system through that. We also talk about time and attendance, where people are rostered on and they check in. They will also use a dedicated app. And so this is essentially driving the employee experience. For today, you see we use some ELMO branding. But a couple of quick things to highlight on the ELMO system. It is configurable from a look and feel perspective. as well as each of our modules has configuration abilities within the product to allow you to put through your specific business process and look and feel. So when we log into the ELMO system, there's a couple of things that you'll note from the start. On the left-hand side here, we've got what we call the navigation bar. Now, for today, I've got everything turned on. It's a little bit busy, but just for your information, you will only ever see the modules that you subscribe to in the ELMO solution. On the right-hand side, we are greeted as an employee by the dashboard. Now, this essentially is your mouthpiece out to your workforce. So essentially all those urgent or communication pieces that you want to get out. For instance, in our case here, just an example of some company alerts and notifications. We've entered the government COVID site just to make employees aware of the current alert levels. Also in here, we typically talk about dynamic content and static content. Dynamic content is those things that change on a daily or weekly basis. For example, things like Wellness Week. We can bring in pieces of information just in time to accommodate that. This dashboard can also take on certain personas. So for instance, in this case, I'm logged in as a manager, and I can also see a couple of quick insights on my team's training compliance, for instance, as well as my team's onboarding progress. So again, nice and simple to bring all of the data points onto one area here. Then this can also be used as a jumping point for employees. Typically, that is accommodated by having single sign-on enabled throughout your environment, but this allows employees to jump to other solutions and other pieces of your ecosystem. Now, one of the key aspects to the system is you don't have to live in here. Every single time you are the call to action, it will come through by the way of a notification in the form of an email, or it could potentially be an SMS message as well if you subscribe to that as well. Typically, if I click on the profile here, what typically is the central glue in the system is the employee profile fields. So Kenny touched on this with regards to having that single source of truth. Now, this is where you can user define all of your specific pieces that you want to capture against the employee. That can further be expanded in each of our modules. If you think of HR, it get expanded, for instance, in our learning, we have a learning record against this profile. In performance, we've got a performance transcript, if you like, of all conversations, all information that was captured against this employee's profile. And then we go take this one step further. We are also using this from an employee self-service perspective, where employees can come in and update information pieces against their profile themselves. So in my case here, for instance, updating my emergency contact details. This also presents organizations with the opportunity to capture your diversity information. And just a quick example there, these are your questions. Employees can complete that, and that can ultimately be reported on as part of your other business reporting. Now, managers also have the freedom to see all of their employees' profiles. You can set the security permissions around what information is displayed. But this allows you to push some of those mundane tasks from a central HR perspective down to your managers to perform things like actions. In this case, Elizabeth might hand in a resignation, and I want to launch an offboarding workflow. So part of the integrated system, we can use the onboarding module to then issue a workflow, which is an orchestrated event to ensure that all things take place. So all assets are collected, a exit survey is done, and the likes. We also then look at the company, why they're in, and out of that information, we can build an org chart. So this is essentially a real-time org chart, which give you a point of view from the employee to employee experience, but we can also slice and dice that. So for instance, if we want to look at a specific department, Gordon is currently logged in here as the manager, and Gordon can see it from his perspective. quickly can see who's currently in the marketing department. And again, that information is available for you to export and also use in your day-to-day reporting. And if we expand our self-service a little bit, you can create any digital documentation or forms in the system, catalog these against your categories, and then allow your employees and managers to self-service this information. So a quick example of this is, for instance, a driver's license form. I just had my team, apologies, the perils of working from home, motorbike starting next door. So as you can see here, the team assignment, I come through and you can see I can assign this whole form against all of my employees or selected employees throughout using the self-service component. Once that form is assigned, there's a couple of ways these forms can work for you. So for instance, we talk about due dates, so we can send alerts to employees to action and make sure these forms are completed. We can capture evidence in these forms, and we can also capture expiry dates, which later on down the track provides you a compliance dashboard to see exactly where all your driver's license across your organization is with regards to expiry. Same goes for your visas and other compliance documentation. Now, all of that information can then also be pulled through. I've logged in here as Danny, who's in my case an HR administrator. So all of that information can be pulled through what we call an insights dashboard. This information, importantly, is all your HR information displayed in various areas. I can do a couple of things here. I can sort this according to timeframes. So if I want to talk about what has happened in my organization in the last 60 or 30 days, you can see I've got one new starter. We can also export this data. So this data can come out into other formats, and we can also combine that with other business data as part of your BI strategy. So important enough, it is integrations that can be created using this information. I can also slice and dice this information to, for instance, use those profile fields that you saw there. I can use that and slice and dice information using those profile fields. And when I submit, that will simply rearrange the data for me based on my criteria that I'm filtering on. So as you can see, immense control of getting all of your employee data into one central point and then be able to report on that. Now, when we talk back and jump back to self-service, we also get to the point where we start looking from an employee perspective in self-servicing things like leave and the like. So we do, in this case, just a little bit of a quick run through of an employee example where employees can come in and clock in as part of the time and attendance. Employees can also come through, log their leave, see their pay slips. So all part of that employee self-service experience. Okay. Now, this experience essentially is put in touch with the employee's device. They can do it from their phone. They can see their shifts they've been rostered on. They can bid for shifts that's made available. So all of that's put in their hand right there and then. Now, you might also have scenarios where you need to cater for employees that walk through the door in a kiosk environment. So in my case here, logging as a manager, I can see who's currently logged in. An employee can walk up. In this case, Andrew's coming in. He's really working. He wants to take a break. He can quickly clock himself out on his break and go away and enjoy his cup of tea or cup of coffee. So a nice little example there, just how the technology can basically be used in all sort of scenarios there for you. Now, also, when we talk about all of that happening throughout your workforce, you then have the control to essentially monitor that in a central point. So here's an example of me seeing, as a manager, my weekly shift that's currently going on. I can also see where people have unavailability, where there's rostering issues, and I can remedy and rectify those on the fly. I can also have a day view, so essentially seeing everybody that's currently at work. I can immediately see where people haven't clocked in or clocked off. So all of that information is available to me. I can also see budget implications. So looking at real-time budgets, obviously this is quite important from a finance perspective. I can see that information in real time, and I can see where my cost lies with regards to my rosters that's currently going on. Now, when we look at the payroll solution, essentially from a payroll perspective, ELMO provides a cloud-based solution. And part of that means that we will always keep the information up to date, keep that running as part of the ongoing, Holidays Act and the likes. So we'll keep that 100% up to date. In my case here, when I log into payroll as a payroll officer or as a senior leader, I can see my total costs currently for my pay run. If I go down, I can see various indicators throughout my pay. I can, from an operational perspective, if I'm a payroll officer, go through and see my pay runs. If I click on that, and I can see it can have multiple pay runs on the go. And also the net wages throughout these pay runs. So again, key indicators right through the process. Also, when we talk about cost, there's some reports available as part of it, which I'll indicate to you towards the end. But first things first, when we look at a fortnightly run in this case, I can see all the current employees. I can see leave information. I can see where there is warnings. In this case, there is a problem with the employee, and I can go and remedy that straight away. So for instance, if I click on Elizabeth's profile here, this information would have been coming through from that HR call. So if the employee has made any changes, that will automatically be fed through. In my case here, as Elizabeth, I can see a couple of things, default rates, etc. I can also come through and make pay run inclusions. So for instance, if I got some port fines which needs to be paid, I can simply come and set that up as part of that specific pay run. So nice and simply to do that. Also, when we look at from a payroll aspect, making changes and updates. So once employee make changes to their KiwiSaver opt-in, all of that information is visible. I can see that in real time, and I can make efforts to adjust that. Now, running and finalizing your pay run, there's a couple of things that will happen throughout this. Your pay bank files automatically gets created, as well as your IRD information, and that can automatically be posted out for you to log with the IRD online portal using your criteria for that. We also have the capability to run various reports, and these reports are often pushed through to other areas, integrate with other information like your general ledger, for example. So all of that capability is there in the system and available to you. Now, just quickly running a variance report here. So just a quick example. All reports can be downloaded out of the system and can be made available in other mediums, but just a quick example of what those reporting real-time can look like. In my case here, just a variance report comparing my previous and current pay runs with each other, and I can see immediately where the variances are popping up. Also, if we talk about finance items today, what I'll do is I'll also just quickly run through our remuneration module for you. So one key thing here is from a finance perspective, you can set budgets and bring these budgets through to the remuneration module. The remuneration module allow you to then set specific criteria around this, rules, etc. So in my case here, for a reviewing manager, I can then pass this through to my managers to make educated sort of changes throughout the cycle. Typically, you'll publish a review strategy or review workflow, And in my case, the managers can see this. They know what's going to happen throughout the cycle. They will also then be presented with specific criteria to then make, as I mentioned, those decisions. So in my case here today, I'm going to just show you the remuneration, but you can also run your allocated bonuses through the system. So once the managers made some data checks, they get presented with the information. As you can see on screen here, all of your guidelines and PARs and salaries information is displayed. And based on your budget information, the managers can then go through and make these changes. The system then safeguards you by using a couple of key indicators, your old traffic light method. So if I go over my budget, you'll see an amber light appears. And so in my case here, I've safeguarded for me from people going over when they do the salary increases. So if I want to do this and I want to pin this back, I can put in fail flags in here. So for instance here, if I do go and give my best friend a 20% increase, you'll see the system will then pop up a red indicator there for the specific scenario. And this might have just timed out. So yeah, the joys of working with live technology. Please just give me a quick second while I get that back up. So in my example here, just to quickly jump in again, apologies, it has actually timed out. So when I go into my remuneration check and I make my change, so I want to do a 20% increase, you can see there the red indicator now stops me from doing that. Also at the bottom, it will also indicate the list of reasons why I can't continue and approve this. So I have to then come back and literally make those changes to be more in line with my budget restrictions, which will give me a green code. In cases where I do want to go outside guidelines, I can in some cases give a variance where I can make a business case. And this business case will go to your approval manager in my example. So again, you can set your REM criteria up in the system, and the system will ensure that your REM guidelines are basically applied. When I log into the system as an administrator, just to quickly show you a couple of key items, all of these criteria are preset with your guidelines running through your business rules, your REM budgets. But ultimately, once those decisions were made throughout the system, we can then set up the letters component, and the system will allow you to generate all of your letters out of the system to create variances and different scenarios based on your criteria. For instance, here, Jennifer did get an increase, so we're including a paragraph with that increased detail. We can also even provide managers with the opportunity to have personalized messages entered here. So again, nice and simple to make this yours and incorporate this as part of your strategy out to your employees. One of the key functions that our current customers love is the fact that you can also have your total remuneration included in this letter, which means that you are in hard times when you can't give increases, you still remind your employees of those benefits that I get, across their whole remuneration schedule. The other benefit of having all of this information is you can again create reports. So here's a very quick example of a report that can be, harvested out of all of that data. Is a gender breakdown of my, salary information. So just a nice little example there of how that data can be utilized. Now, when we look at finance, also Kenny referred to the expenses side of things. So ELMO has an expenses system to essentially help you with people capturing this information. So you've got a lot of, again, people out on the road doing what they need to do and then capturing these expenses. So this is an example of the mobile interface where I can see all my totals. I can see, the expenses I've submitted, approved, rejected, and I can jump into things like my claim history in this case. and also look at all notifications that came, whether it was approved or not approved. The little blue cross in the middle here, that's where I can click on to scan a receipt. So in my case here, I've done a bit of shopping at Country Road, scanning this information in. I'm not sure what I bought there, can't remember. But essentially, all of that information can then be allocated to the necessary categories. As you can see there, you can see the OCR solution is working to your favor. All you then have to do is allocate the expenses to the necessary areas as part of this. Now, once you've done that, all of that information will flow through. So looking at the mobile interface there, we do also have what we call a web interface. So if you do want to come through and access this on your browser, you can do so as well. So in my case here, I've got all my expenses lined up. One thing that is quite nice is all of those expenses that I've captured come through, as well as my credit card items. So in my case here, I see all my credit card items, and what will happen is those credit card fees, based on the amounts and based on the receipts I've scanned in, it will auto reconcile and add those in for you as part of your claims. So no need to go through every item. The system will do the heavy lifting for you. Now also, when I look at my claims, I can do ad hoc expenses or out of cycle claims. So in my case here, looking at an out-of-pocket example, I can also go through and collect mileage. Apologies, it logged out again. So from a mileage perspective, coming into my out-of-pocket, I can go in as an employee and very simply add an item to the claim and select my mileage as on screen there. And then also go and indicate using my map. So obviously in my case, I'm using Auckland as my base, but then simply type in my location from to, and it will automatically calculate the distance for me. So a nice little feature there to help employees. And then of course I can send my claims through for approval. And if in my case, Kenny will simply approve them because I'm a good guy, but also if there's any problems and he rejects them, it will come back into my claims. So from a reporting perspective, all of this information, once approved, can feed through for payments. And we also have integrations through to your general ledger. So we can either do that through, API connections or through a CSV feed, depending on which systems you use. Now, I've run through the finance side of things. So what I want to do now is just jump into a couple of the other HR modules, so to speak. So the first one, just want to land on is recruitment. So from a ELMO perspective, we do end-to-end recruitment. So essentially what you're seeing here is our recruitment dashboard. So as part of your process, you can set up requisitions, get approvals, do your advertising on Seed, TradeMe and the likes. You can also, scan this through to shortlisting. We can do auto shortlisting as part of the experience there for you. You can do your interviews, and then finally your digital agreements. So these agreements can be digitally sent out to your candidates or your new applicant or the selected applicant. And then once they accept that, that can be run through as a onboarding process. Now, those onboarding processes is essentially yours. It can be run through, and I typically just throw up a quick example of an event there. So typically through this onboarding workflow, your workflow is essentially digitized. This can include things like your IR330, all of those financial compliance information that you need to collect, and they can automatically be routed to your payroll officers, where it is IT information, to all the necessary stakeholders. Now, what ELMO does in this case is then digitize this as part of this process, and then we can automate that and also give the new hire an experience as part of this. Also, part of that new hire experience is also exposed them to the learning solution. So with ELMO, we have a learning management system as well as content. So as part of ELMO's learning management system, we've got 250 courses specific to New Zealand and about 450 specific to Australia and New Zealand. So essentially what we allow customers to do with that content is make it their own. Where it's legislative and regulatory, we will also maintain that on an ongoing basis and provide you with the information of the changes that's done. Now, what a lot of customers do is use our content as baseline, and they add a layer of their own information on top of that. So we provide a course builder, which then allows you to build your own courses. So a quick example that if you are building out a health and safety course, we can simply, present that to the learner. In my case here, I can then just go through that health and safety training. So here's an example that has been set up with the ELMO course builder. So just a nice example there. You can also embed several types of criteria in here, different types of information. Just want to quickly scroll through to an example. For instance, embed video in there. So this is just a very quick, simple example of a worksite video as part of a health and safety, but nice and simple to, as I said, use us for 101 and then create another layer over the top of that. Our learning also comes with assessments. So this allows you to test the users through that process. And then once complete, you can also ask for policy acknowledgements. So this allows you to dictate that the employee at least have to read that policy by opening it. Once they've complete reading it, they can then come and sign those policies off. Okay, and all of that information again can be part of your business intelligence to ensure you look at things like engagement and also compliance. Now, the next part of this is the ELMO Performance, which essentially provides you with the capability to set up your appraisal templates. So I've got a very traditional 12-month appraisal template here, which is 100% configurable. So what ELMO allows is have your key KPIs, OKRs, or personal goals included in here. We have libraries for these items, which you can simply set up. And if you remember those profile fields at the beginning, we can use those profile fields to essentially assign the OKRs or the KPIs out to your staff, whether it's organizational goals that you want them to adhere to, or whether it's your values that you want to push through, that can be automatically pushed. We also have where people indicate that they need help. We provide a development plan as part of the structure where they can come in and then link some of those learning items that you just saw in that list. They can come through and link through to some of those development items, nicely dovetailing between the learning and development. You also have the capability to do your quarterly or monthly check-ins through here. Here's just a very quick example where the employee provide their feedbacks, followed by the manager. And in this case, I've also put a rating scale in as part of that. So as part of your performance strategy, you can essentially align that with all of your indicators that you want to capture. In my example, just a very traditional example there. Now, this brings us to COVID Secure. So we've launched COVID Secure a couple of months ago now. But essentially what we've done is we've provided a toolkit for organizations to capture key pieces of information. So in here, you'll see some of those key forms, testing forms, for instance, vaccination forms, to capture that information. And this means that your employees can come through and self-service these forms, or it can also be assigned to them. So if you remember the driver's license example I had up as part of the HR core, we expanded on that technology. We've also provided an area where you can click into the resources for guiding your employees through this. Because keep in remember, this is not just about the organization, it's also about the wider 5 million people out there as a country. So essentially we provide the key pieces of information there. So once self-service, the employee can click on the information, go in and complete the form. So in my case here, I've just got an example of a vaccination form. So within that form, I can see I'm sorry, just bear me while I open that. I can see the necessary information. I can provide the evidence. I can schedule whether I've done my first vaccination or my second vaccination. And then I can also consent to that information being provided through to my organisation. And then lastly, all of that information can be pulled through to what we call the sort of dashboard. And this provides you as an organisation with key statistics around your employees. Apologies, unfortunately, my demo environment, not everybody has pulled this out, but you can see how that data is populated through to these areas. I can see if I have any positive cases, and I can manage it from there. Now, again, part of having a convergent solution is that when we see we have a positive case, we can launch a workflow which helps that employee maybe through their next 14 days, whether they have to isolate or whatever the case might be. We can make that part of the system as well. So again, from an ELMO perspective, this information, you can set the privacy around this. You can see and dictate who has access to this. So we provide you with that platform to essentially capture, secure, and make your data available. This data can also be exported and make part, again, of your business intelligence reporting. So while we're on that subject, I want to end this today by just showing you a quick example of our report builder. So with ELMO, we have standard reports for all of those modules you saw today, but then we also make available a report builder. We essentially provide you with the capability to select the exact fields that you want to get out of the system. Okay. Now, this is also the tool that you will use to come and select what information you want to schedule and export maybe on a daily basis to, again, incorporate either as part of your BI strategy or data warehousing or whatever projects you might have in the organization. Now, as you can see here, I just wanted to have some core information around my employees. I select all the fields that I want, and I can simply generate a report to bring that data out. These reports can be saved and for frequently accessed. And again, as I mentioned, it can be made available based on your specific security profiles. ELMO's also recently, expanding further on this, ELMO's also recently launched out our analytics, which is two parts, collecting all of that information in your system and having some preset dashboards which you can use. Here's just a very quick example of a workforce overview one. But again, all of this information can then also be configured later on down the track to present specific pieces of data that you might want to represent. All right. So I want to thank you for your time today, and I'm going to hand you back to Andrew and Kenny. Thanks very much, guys. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Hannah. That was great. Appreciate the time there, and to give people a bit of an overview. As you can see, the ELMO software offers a wide range of product, which I suppose is always a good thing. That ability to tailor and contextualize to the needs of any organization is important. And that's why working with Andrew Linegar and the team at Liberate I.T, it's really critical for us to be able to make sure that they can extend out to yourselves, whoever you are and wherever you are working with them, to be able to know that you can access a software and a technology that is capable of delivering this type of functionality. So we're free, Andrew, to take any questions if there's anything that's come through. I'm not sure if there has. Often there might be ones that have made it ahead of time. I'm not sure. So feel free to hit us with what you've got if there's anything.
Yeah, none have come through just yet, but I've got a couple, if I may. And
sure.
I always say this: my wife is a kindergarten teacher, and I tend to have comments more than questions. And little kindergarten kids can't tell the difference, but I can. But they're more comments than anything. So, Fanny, you did well to go through that in just 40 minutes. It's a big solution you have there, and I think it shows the depth and the I guess the different modules and how they integrate with each other, you know, things like people having qualifications, if linking that through to payroll, that can drive certain allowances and things like that. That's and rostering and scheduling. I know you only just touched on those things, but yeah, it's quite a comprehensive HR suite that can complement an ERP solution, right? So just as we think NetSuite is a one-stop shop for all things end-to-end business, this really complements the HR side of NetSuite that you know NetSuite just doesn't cover here in our region. So you know, I'm an ex-payroll person myself, so seeing that pay run variance report is just like, oh yeah, you've just got the ability to control variances and make sure that there's nothing untowards going on, nothing worse than paying someone 3 times what they should or 20 times what they should. I do have a question that's come through, and the question is, does ELMO talk to a factory time clock where employees sign in with a fingerprint? So finger scan capture. I know that you had a solution there where the users would put in a passcode, but can ELMO integrate with an external clocking system really and receive start and finish times that way?
Yeah, a very good question. So currently we don't. So we have a kiosk environment where people can log in and log out. But one of the key fundamentals here is that if you have factory conditions and you do want to interface with a third-party system, that the potential is there. We're happy to give you some more information, but there is application. So APIs and the likes that can integrate with third-party tool sets. So often people who already have these tool sets in place want to integrate. Now there is of course some scenarios that might require a scoping and understanding. But yeah, we if we don't, we potentially integrate with those third parties.
Okay. Another question I have would be, you know, what would be the master versus slave in terms of ERP to ELMO, right? As it relates to your people in your team. You know, typically we would see ERP being that master, but I guess the comprehensive nature of ELMO, you kind of go, well, wouldn't you start with ELMO and then get those people as users set up in something like NetSuite?
Yeah, really good question, Andrew, and it's one that we come across a lot when we're talking to organizations. Ultimately, for us, it's really about providing the right solution for the client at an individual level. Everybody has their own view of what is that master data set. It could sit within payroll. It could easily sit within Active Directory, using something like that as a functionality. As you say, talking to many of your clients, it's their ERP function. Data flow from those systems and in between those systems is becoming more prevalent than ever. So we can make that happen. And typically what we do is we'll often map out with organizations, potentially with their CTOs, their IT teams, to better understand what master data needs to look like, what needs to go where and when, and then work out the best flow to ensure that the organization is actually getting the outcome that they want. The common question that we hear is, can we just suck everything out of the system and use it for something else? The answer is technically yes, but the questions that tend to follow up are, what are you going to do with some of that very sensitive personal information, and how are you going to secure it, and how are you going to look after it? How are you going to maintain that, from your employees' perspective, they can trust that it isn't being used in an adverse way? And typically what that does is scale back the request initially around, can we have everything, and starts to get a little bit more customized, a little bit more bespoke in terms of, well, actually what we really mean is we want all the employee high level data. We want learning records. We want performance outcomes. We want to look at some succession because we're using some BI tools or things like that. Maybe we've subscribed to some kind of legislative requirement, or the United Nations have got some best practices of working, in terms of green footprints, or making sure that sustainability is a big aim. And an organization might actually want to take some reporting out to be able to build a response or a document that way. So it's really about spending time understanding the needs, understanding that master or and the slave system, and then making sure that the integrations work appropriately and get the data flow going where it needs to.
Awesome, excellent. And obviously, you guys have your APIs that, as does NetSuite. So that integration there is working, and I think CSV uploads of journal files have been around for the last 30 years or so, maybe 40 now, showing my age. So, worst case, that's always available too, right? So, that would be good to explore with various customers, the type of integration needed around all that, for sure, because every business is quite different, as you can imagine. And I guess I'll wrap up with just saying, I think the onboarding and offboarding piece is some of the most undervalued pieces of a software system like yours. But, just making sure you've got a computer and a phone for a new employee that's there when they arrive on their first day, surprisingly how difficult that actually is to achieve without a system like ELMO. So, that all goes to employee experience and engagement, and it's those little things that seem to matter, which is great. So,
yeah, and the reports and the reporting that comes out, within even the HR community, backs that up. Positive onboarding experience for a new employee definitely positively affects tenure. And in a market that is so difficult to recruit in, anything that we can be doing to positively improve tenure is a positive outcome. So from an ROI perspective, it's really important. And I think you certainly nailed that right on the head there.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you all. No further questions come through. So thanks everyone for your time. I will wrap up and share my screen. So look, big thank you to the ELMO team. Really appreciate your time today. If anyone's got any questions for the team, don't hesitate to reach out to any one of them, but I chose Andrew Beatty. His email address is down the bottom of your screen. Coming up in terms of our webinar series, we wrap up in November. So we are inviting NetSuite's head of learning, who's Singapore-based. She's going to come and talk to us about NetSuite's company-wide Learning Cloud Support Pass. We use it internally at Liberate. We find it an amazing tool to help you with all things NetSuite, both getting started and even consultant level access and training courses. We find that fantastic. And I'm also going to get Lass in, who's going to help us understand what NetSuite has available in terms of tracking your manufacturing process via mobile and tablet. So really looking forward to that. So as mentioned earlier, we'll be recording, we have recorded today's session. It will go up on our YouTube page. If there's anything that you want to watch again, just give us a week or two to get that up there. So from here, I will wrap up and say thanks very much to the ELMO team, and goodbye for now.
We hope this video gave you the information you were after. If you have any further questions, get in touch with us using the links in the description. At Liberate IT, we can provide free consulting to understand your business system requirements, understand your company growth plans, and provide free NetSuite demonstrations. For more information, visit our website.